Hey, what's up, everybody? On the west side, just heading to Lower East Side. Some serious jam up around here, man, with that construction going on. So I did a throwback video yesterday for Zuccotti Park. I don't know if you guys remember that park. There was a park called Zuccotti Park. I did a little throwback video going back 2008, 2009 crash, subprime loans. A lot of people were freaked out. There was a lot of anger, and people moved into protesters moved into Zuccotti Park, and supposedly got like very unsanitary. I think it probably did. You know, the cops, NYPD finally moved in and just vacated the whole place because they had enough. But, you know, it was interesting times, man, because people for a while there, people were coming from the Midwest, all over, regular people that had got screwed on their loans. You know, their houses were foreclosed on, or some people were in a bind and they needed to sell their house. And because of everything crashing, the values in homes just plummeted, and people were totally screwed. Yeah, people got totally screwed on that one. It was actually a bad one. Real bad. It wasn't easy for people to come back from that. Yeah, so that was Zuccotti Park was like a central point for everything. It started off as a good protest, and then it just went sideways when things started getting really unsanitary there. And then, of course, the city stepped in and said, you know, this is enough is enough. But I don't think it really was meant to start out that way. It was really a legitimate protest against the banks and everything. And the banks just let things get way out of control, and it was just fucked up. It was just a total collapse, actually, of things. You know, the subprime loans, they were all packaged and sold as good loans, but they weren't, and what happened, what really got people pissed off was, and I understand why, it was just regular middle America that got hit the worst, because these were pension funds, and a couple of cities got hit really hard. I know the West Coast got slammed. I mean, Lancaster, all that, and going out west and north in California, some of those small desert towns, they just got totally slammed. I mean, it was really, really bad, the amount of bankruptcies that happened. Dick. So yeah, these subprime loans got packaged up, resold as really good loans. Like, you know how banks sell loans? Like, I know I haven't owned a house in a while, but when I did own a house in California, and I got totally hosed. I may not have actually ever been able to recover from that 2008, because I expanded my business out to California because of a lot of customers that were asking me to service LA and a little bit of San Francisco, and I was very hesitant, but I went ahead and did it, and it was probably one of the best things that ever happened, because I really liked California a lot. It was a beautiful place. I mean, actually California is where I learned to lane split and ride for a living, you know. Prior to that, I just rode, you know, around the city and stuff, and a little off-roading. Nothing crazy. But California opened my eyes up to how you could ride around LA, because LA traffic at the time was just as bad, if not worse than it, probably worse than it is now, because there's less businesses in downtown, but it was bad, real bad actually. And it was just rough when I first moved out there. I didn't have a bike, because the kind of riding I did prior, like I had a little dirt bike, you know, but I had nothing big, you know. And the first bike I got in LA was a KLR. Pretty nice actually. 2007 KLR 650. Bought it at Delamo Motorsports. And I think they're in, not Long Beach, but off the 405. I had a friend that was working there, and I just bought it there. But it was a nice bike to get around LA, but I soon outgrew that, you know. And I actually had a Buell XB9 SX. That was they called it the Buell SB9 SX City, and it was touted as a city bike. It was awesome. I mean, the problem was it had a Harley motor, so, you know, it didn't last 20,000 miles. The crank blew on it, you know. bearing blew and the engine just seized. Metal parts all over the place. It was sad. Would have liked to have had something that could do more miles. I mean, I just went everywhere on that Buell. And the sound was kind of cool because it was a V-twin parallel, not a parallel, I'm sorry. It was a Harley motor, the V-twin, and it had a very distinct sound. And it was cool. I mean, and it was very well designed. Like everything was low on the bike. Oil, fuel, exhaust. Very low down on the bike. So that it was designed that way. Because when a bike has everything low down, it doesn't feel heavy. It's very balanced, and that was good, you know. It was a nice machine. But I enjoy going around LA on that bike. You could even lane split on the 110, which is considered the impossible highway to lane split on, which, you know, in California standards, impossible is like the FDR, the Harlem River Drive. Those are considered impossible to lane split. You wouldn't even try. That's how. But yeah, the 110 freeway was like the impossible road to lane split on. And I like that bike a lot. I was just so disappointed how it just totally coughed up along at 20,000 miles. It was it, man. And it was funny because a lot of friends told me that new Harleys, they were like, dude, that bike, you ride the shit out of that and it's not going to last. And I was like, really? It's a Buell road. It's so well designed. And they were like, yeah, but the problem is it has a Harley motor. And Eric Buell actually that was the one thing he didn't like about the setup with Harley. He didn't like the fact that he had to use a Harley motor in his bikes, but that was a I didn't find that out till later, that was an actual requirement, that he couldn't sell his bikes without a Harley motor. It was a requirement, on his part. Use Harley motor or don't sell, or you can't be a part of us. So that's what happened. Well, it was a rough ride coming down here. Yeah, so I wasn't a big fan of the Harley motor, but I did love the sound. But I can understand the quandary that Eric Buell was in, because he had to sell a bike that could be mass-produced and sold in Harley dealerships. And how are you going to go up against Harley that tells you you have to put our motor in it? You know, you can't really fight that. I mean, I'm sure he wanted to put his motor in there that was well-designed, water-cooled, a sport bike, you know, something that was up for the task, because that SB9 SX City was a nice bike, 998 cc's, but it was air-cooled. I mean, and that's a big motor to be air-cooled. This bike is air-cooled, but you can't really consider it air-cooled because it's got oil going through the frame, which dissipates quite a bit of heat. So I would call this bike oil-cooled, the XR650L. It's more like an oil-cooled bike, in my opinion. That's just my opinion, but of course that's not scientifically proven, because it's technically not an oil-cooled bike, you know. It doesn't have an oil cooler. But if you've ever put your hand near this container where the oil goes, if you put your hand here, this dissipates a lot of heat, because the oil's constantly being pumped through there. So the amount of cooling off the engine is getting is a lot. Otherwise, an air-cooled bike might be a problem in a very humid place like New York in the summertime, but I've yet to have issues. I've asked people about it, but people said don't worry about it, because I've had guys from like Arizona tell me, hey, if you live out here and it goes up to 120 and you're sitting, not moving, in that dry air, we said maybe you might have a problem. You might float a valve or two, you know, but you're going to know about it. You're going to smell that terrible smell, because the plastics on the bike will start to, you know, get really too hot. They'll get too hot. You know, when the plastics start getting really hot, that's when you're going to know that things have overheated. Well, it's not a huge big deal. I mean, you're really going to know about that you've ran this thing too hot. You're going to know about it, I think, way beforehand. And that's what people told me. But on the Buell, it was another ball game altogether. That was an air-cooled bike, almost a liter bike, air-cooled, if you can imagine. If you can imagine like an air-cooled liter bike, nobody would drive that in a place. I don't think people would want to drive that, you know, because if you did achieve like a temperature that was beyond what you should be, yeah, that was basically what that bike was. But the sound was so awesome, and the way the bike was designed, I would actually think about riding one of those again. You know, but the problem is it would be too old now, and it's so hard to maintain it. And so I wouldn't even think of that. But you know, if I got a really good deal on a low mileage one, maybe. I mean, you even have to dismount the engine. You have to dismount the engine mounts on the front. and take the front wheel off to be able to work on the spark plugs, because it's so hard to get at everything. It's so tucked in under the frame that you really can't get at anything. I mean, on an XR, I could just pull over right now and change my spark plug. You know, that you're not going to do that on a Buell. So that would be probably why you would not want to use a bike like that. I love a high performance bike. I love bikes with features and all that. But I don't love them in New York, because New York is too difficult to place when things go wrong. Like, you might not even find someone to tow you. So you might say, oh, I have AAA, I have everything. I have a motorcycle. I'm a motorcycle AMA member, so I get the free free towing, all that stuff. But that might not happen so easily for you. Might not be as easy as you might think. So you might not get the towing you're expecting. Yeah. So yeah, what I was saying about difficulties in New York are very unexpected things that can happen. Like, you might find one night where you can't get a tow. And nobody will get you. so you're gonna lock your bike up to a post or something. But imagine if you were over here, like 4th Avenue. Either the city's gonna get it or a thief is gonna get it. But somebody's gonna get it. If you leave it around here. It's too public a place, so somebody will come by and be like, oh man, so you're gonna have to push it somewhere that's a little bit better, and then you might be a little bit better off. But that'll be your biggest problem in New York is unexpected incidents, adverse weather. I mean, you don't want to be on the side of the road trying to diagnose something with a laptop. So you're gonna have to tow it if you have a bike that's not analog, like this bike. And that's going to be your problem. Like on the XR, you could probably make it home. You might have to lock it to something and come back with a chain or a stator or something. Spark plugs if you don't have them on you. Probably be all right. 99% of the time, unless you have a catastrophic engine failure, which you're not going to walk away from on any bike. Going to Army Plaza over here, and then I'll go down Flatbush, get some gas on the way south on Flatbush, past Prospect Park over here. This wasn't bad timing though, coming through here. Get some gas over here. call it a day over here, get some gas. Alright everybody, I'm going to kill this video now because it's just all boring Brooklyn streets, surface streets.